Hello, I am so happy to be able to announce the 10th recipient of the White Pube Writers Grant, which is funded by Creative Debuts. This 10th award goes to, drumroll, Natalie Dunning. I'm just going to read out a quick bio. Natalie Dunning is a writer and designer from Manchester. Art school led her to work in bars, schools, and temp agencies. A health scare led her to write about the things that she cares about: health, food, and culture. Her recent work has focused on alternative perspectives of chronic pain, gaming, and pain management. She's currently writing about the joys of chicken splits, dystopian wellness cafes, and cooking with fire. Natalie sent us a text about hiking the uncanny valleys of Red Dead Redemption 2 and a text titled Why I Sometimes Like My Chronic Pain. This bit is written by Gab, so I'm just going to read it. It's going to be in my voice, but pretend it's Gab speaking. This feels like a really special and emotional moment, not just because this is the 10th grant to go out, but because I feel such an affinity with Natalie's writing. Her text, Why I Sometimes Like My Chronic Pain, made me reflect on my relationship with long COVID, something I'm struggling with, but something that means I no longer sweat the small stuff precisely because of that struggle. Another text, Hiking the Uncanny Valleys of Red Dead Redemption 2, made me fall in love all over again with the vast experiences we can have in video game spaces, and how vital and wonderful access to adventure can feel in a sick body. She writes through these subjects with such clarity. Her tone is raw and optimistic, and basically I've been thinking about her texts ever since she sent them our way. So, we're really glad to be able to support Natalie through this grant, and we hope you find a similar joy in her work too. Now, I'm going to hand over to Natalie, who is going to read Hiking the Uncanny Valleys of Red Dead Redemption 2. We include these audio versions of the announcements and the texts because it's a nice way to listen to things. If you prefer listening as a format rather than reading, it can be nice to hear the actual texts in a writer's own voice. But if you would also like to read Why I Sometimes Like My Chronic Pain, both that text and this text will be linked on the White Pube Writers Grant page, which is thewhitepube.com/writers grant, and both of those texts will be linked along with texts by all our previous recipients. So I'm going to shut up now. I'll hand over to Natalie. I'll come back at the end with a little bit of explanation about the Writers Grant. But yeah, shutting up now. Bye.
I grew up with the mindset that fitness was not for people like me. Somehow, it seemed shallow or vain to actively maintain your body. To my younger self, less familiar with the vulnerability and ever-changing nature of a body, I viewed exercise as some sort of interfering. So the closest I ever came to a gym was watching Rocky. However, while I've never been particularly athletic, I've always loved being outdoors. My grandparents instilled an appreciation for nature in me from a young age. I was soon able to identify plants by their Latin names, name birds, and spot mushrooms on walks. As a child, I would also go fishing with my dad, learning how to fish ugly pike in muddy canals at first, and later progressing on to rainbow trout in idyllic rivers. A day of wading through rivers and walking through forests probably burned more calories than a jog, but walking outdoors didn't count as fitness to me. Walking was a fact of life, and also a source of independence. It allowed me to explore my surroundings, unrestricted by bus schedules or traffic lights. I'm lucky enough to live between a large city and easily accessible countryside, so exploration promises vastly different things, only 6 miles apart. If I turn left, I might see stags fighting on a hilltop, or a badger emerge from a 200-year-old tree. If I turn right, I might discover the best falafel in town for only £2.50, or a loquat tree fruiting outside a neighbour's house. In the late 2000s, health became another thing to hack. When my friend's Strava stats replaced regrettable drunk photos in my Facebook feed, I scoffed. but when my phone started telling me how many steps I'd taken on a trip to the shops, I couldn't help but feel a sense of achievement. I'd never thought about my walking as a process until then, only an outcome. I walked until I felt satisfied. I walked until I knew a place. I walked until I got to my destination. But my iPhone changed this. I began thinking in step counts. Walking to the best falafel shop in town became 14,385 steps. My walk to work was a way of getting an easy 10,000 steps in. I was once more excited about a 26,000 step count than the mountain view that my walk had led me to. My friends were working hard to produce weekly impressive lines on Strava maps, but I was gaming the system. At my first corporate job, I worked for a fitness-obsessed millionaire who thought setting the office temperature to Mark Zuckerberg's recommended 15 degrees would turn the suburban office into a Silicon Valley outpost. Instead of an HR department, he armed staff with Fitbits and walked around the small office advising everyone to eat more salt. Hacking health, or optimizing the body, seemed to be at the forefront of his mind. Being paid less than the living wage while having my health made agile was infuriating. I saw that my boss's obsession with converting the qualitative to the quantitative was linked to his love of the Fitbit. As a businessman, he saw the bottom line in everything, including health. I realised my step counting was part of this problem. I was trying to optimise my time and body at the expense of my experiences. Sadly, this realisation came shortly before I injured my knee. Then the following year, I injured my spine. As a result, I've spent most of the last few years first on crutches, then recovering from spinal surgery, and now suffering from chronic nerve pain, which is most likely permanent. Needless to say, my step count is pretty low these days. So when the UK went into lockdown, I was already used to being stuck at home. I live in Manchester, an area that has been under the most extreme lockdown measures in the country for over 300 days. It's been interesting watching my loved ones acclimatise to the changing pace. Some have developed baking addictions, others have started jogging. I've just continued my routine of ice packs, physio, and short laps around the local park. A couple of months into the pandemic, I was struggling with increasing nerve pain and looking for something to distract me, so my boyfriend suggested I try playing Red Dead Redemption 2. I hadn't had a console since I was a teenager, during the rise of Call of Duty, a gaming culture which I felt wasn't really for me. But from the moment Red Dead Redemption 2 loaded, I was gripped. That weekend, I spent almost 20 hours gaming, something which is now a regular occurrence. If you aren't familiar with it, Red Dead is an incredibly detailed open-world game set in the final years of the American Old West. In addition to the game's storyline, you can wander through the map. As it's set in 1899, there are large areas of uninhabited, unspoiled land to explore. The landscape is populated by over 200 species of animals, 40 types of interactive plants, unpredictable weather, and terrain ranging from snowy mountains to arid deserts. The sound design is elaborate, and the graphics are near photorealistic. When I'm not wearing my glasses, it's as good as a nature documentary. Think Attenborough, but with guns. The map contains 5 fictional American states. Roanoke Ridge is remarkably similar to the areas of countryside surrounding me in real life. Oak trees and ferns line paths, rainbow trout live in rivers, and of course, it often rains. Although the Derbyshire and Cheshire countryside doesn't have many gangs of murderous hillbillies, despite what most Londoners might believe. My favourite location is an empty outpost called The Loft, a wooden cabin with a viewing tower where you can see for miles. Downstairs there's a small stove and a bed, with a campfire outside. I'll often spend the night there so I can see the golden morning light stream through the window, then climb the viewing tower to observe the day's progress. The hyper-realistic graphics and sound give these moments a tangible quality. I often feel like I can almost smell the pine cabin walls as they are warmed by the sunlight. There's an online multiplayer version of the game, but I prefer to play alone. It's difficult to have a quiet Sunday morning hike when a 14-year-old from Michigan keeps shooting your horse. However, there's still a sense of community to be found. Despite the headshots, Red Dead fans are generally quite endearing. I sometimes check Reddit for help unlocking features. More often than I'd like to admit, I end up scrolling for half an hour, reading in-jokes, appreciation posts for the landscape, or theories on Easter eggs within the game. In a thread speculating on the story behind The Loft, one user, or poet, commented, "Exploration is about what you don't find as much as it is what you do find." As the pandemic has worn on and my mobility has decreased, I've become increasingly invested in the game. A year ago, I remember feeling furiously jealous of my newly furloughed friends posting stories from the top of Snowdonia or wild swimming in Yorkshire. I couldn't make the most of the lockdown like this. I could barely walk to Sainsbury's. But now I just turn on the Xbox and go on a fishing trip, or spend hours collecting wild herbs, flowers, and mushrooms. I've even found that my knowledge of real-life plants and birds is useful in the game. I'm ashamed to admit that I've become a virtual bird watcher, using the game's intricate sound design to my advantage by identifying bird calls. This all makes me sound too tame for the Wild West, but don't worry, I do sometimes venture into town and blow a few heads off with a shotgun. The virtual nature of this exploration means it is dependent on my stillness. It also renders step counters redundant. When I'm exploring a cave behind a waterfall or discovering a new lake, I'm normally lying on a sofa with an ice pack under my back. I often wonder if my lack of physical engagement heightens my sensory perception. Is the tangible quality of the game just my brain filling in the blanks? Or has the absence of step counting or thoughts of pain given me more space to appreciate it? I'd like to say that virtual exploration has left me with a new appreciation for walking and being outdoors, but really it's like scratching an itch on a phantom limb. While I hope I can find a way to recover from chronic pain, I'm reluctant to get my hopes up. The longer nerve damage and nerve pain persist after spinal surgery, the less likely it is to heal. For now, I just try to remember, exploration is about what you don't find, as much as it is about what you do find.
Hello, it's me again. So, the White Pube Writers Grant is funded by Creative Debuts. Creative Debuts is a disrupting and democratising art platform focused on supporting artists and designers from underrepresented communities that may otherwise go under the radar. So as well as being funders for our Writers Grant, they also do the Black Artist Grant. Info for the Writers Grant is on our website, but check out Creative Debuts for info about the bag, the Black Artist Grant, and you can find them on Instagram as well. So that's creativedebuts.co.uk and at Creative Debuts on Instagram. The White Pube Writers Grant is a one-off £500 grant to be given out to a different working class writer based in the UK once every month. This grant has been set up to support writers of all ages who are early in their careers and would benefit from this no strings attached financial support to help them in whatever way they like, be that money to cover time to write, books, web hosting, printing, subscriptions, research, development, travel, or even just money to fund life expenses and rent. Some writers publish work on their own websites with little to no funding to encourage them. Others pitch to established publications and, if they are lucky, might get paid every once in a while to write for someone else. It's difficult to keep going and harder still to carve out the time to write, which is what writing needs. So we hope this grant will help towards those challenges in some small way. A recipient will be chosen monthly, and this grant is open to individuals, collaborations and groups. The writing could be fiction or non-fiction, creative, criticism, whatever it is you're working on. The White Pube will be selecting recipients, and these will be chosen based on their ongoing research as well as anybody who would like to put themselves forward. There is no formal application process. If you would like to get in touch, please email funding@thewhitepube.com with a very brief introduction to yourself, contact information and of course an example of your writing. This could be text in the body of the email itself, attached to the PDF, or a link to an external website or recording. There is no deadline, as this is a monthly rolling grant, and the grant does not expect any outcomes or reporting. We do have further FAQs on the Writers Grant page on our website, so if you have some questions, definitely double check the FAQs. Go to thewhitepube.co.uk or .com, either one, /writers grant, and all of that information that I just read out, plus the FAQs, plus all of the work of our previous recipients. I hope that you enjoyed Natalie's work, and I hope that you get a chance to check out that back catalogue. That's all from me, so I will see you this time next month. Goodbye.